Hi, I'm Roxanne Richardson, and this is Technique Tuesday. To add waist shaping to the body of a sweater, you need to consider a couple of things. One is, where do you want that narrowest point to be in your sweater? This one is right at the natural waistline, but you may not want it at that location. And the next thing is, how dramatic do you want that shaping to be? So this is a sweater that is meant to have several inches of ease, positive ease around the bust, meaning it's larger around the bust than my actual body is. And so I have some waist shaping, but it's not meant to be totally clingy to my body. So once you decide those things, then you can go through and calculate how to do your decreases and increases and where to do them in order to get the waist shaping that you want. So let's look at a few different examples of how waist shaping is done differently. I already mentioned this sweater has several inches of positive ease around the bust, and the waist shaping is meant to hit at the natural waistline. And in this case, I did what is pretty typical in this kind of a situation, and I decrease 4 inches total at this point, and then I went back out to the original circumference later on. So here's an example of a vest that is meant to be very closely fitting, so without much ease at all. And in this case, the idea was that this would really skim the body the entire way down. And so there are about 6 inches of narrowing in this, and it begins right below the underarm shaping, and it starts right after the ribbing. So nearly the entire length of the body has shaping involved in this particular sweater vest. Now this is an example of a sweater I did for my long-term project where I knit a sweater from each decade, and this one is from the 1940s. So this sweater, again, is meant to be very closely fitting. So it's supposed to fit the bust pretty much exactly, give or take an inch. It's not as long as the other sweaters. This is meant to sit a little bit higher up on the hip. And in this case, there is shaping that is done pretty soon after the hem, but it goes in pretty dramatically and then it comes right back out. The shaping is done not in 4 locations, so it's not done just on each side of the front and the back. It's done in 8 locations. There's also shaping done along here. So this is like centered right below the bust apex. There is this line of decreases right here, and then increases. And in this case, they were mirroring the decreases away from the area that's changing in size, so toward the edges of these shapes. So you had these pairs of decreases here on each side. So there were 8 decreases, and then the increases going back out. Once those were done, additional increases were done at the sides only to bring it up to the total bust circumference needed, because this bottom, because it didn't go down as low as some sweaters, is a smaller circumference than the bust does. So depending on how long you have the body and what your own measurements are and how closely or not closely you want it to fit you, there's a variety of ways that the shaping can be done. So the last example is a shaping that's done a bit differently than what we've seen so far. And what you can see here is that you're going straight from the hem up to here, and then you go in gradually, and then you come back out more dramatically. This is part of the schematic from a Nora Gahn sweater called Drift, which I'll put on the screen. And so for this particular sweater, the narrowest part is really at the underbust. For many women, that actually is the narrowest part of their torso. So this can be a really flattering type of waist shaping if that is your narrowest point, and then you can go out. You could even keep going out if you are maybe more pear-shaped and you need it to be even wider. So if you look right here, this is the full bust, but like right where your bra band would go, that would be your under bust, and that is up higher than where your natural waist would be. So again, for some people, it might be more flattering for them to have the waist shaping be up higher and then have that done more quickly between here and then more gradually as you go down. So I'll leave a link to that Nora Gone pattern. It is a free pattern. I'll leave links to all the sweaters that I have shown you where I can. They're not all available in pattern form. I just this past weekend started a new sweater project for the fall. It's a pattern called Oak Ledge by Valerie Hobbs, and I really liked a lot of the details, but there was one thing I wanted to change. It did not have waist shaping, and this was a sweater that I felt that I really wanted to add it to. And so you can see what I've started here. This is the left front of the sweater. I wanted to start with a smaller part of the sweater just to make sure that everything was going the way I wanted it to go. And you can see that I have, this is a sweater that's worked bottom up, that I've worked the decreases here. I did a straightaway portion here, and now I've started to do the increases. So let me show you how I did the calculations for this. So this rectangle represents the part of the garment where the shaping is going to occur. This is essentially between the bottom hem and the underarm. So if you're working top down, then this would be the underarm and that would be the hem. So regardless, you're working decreases, straight, and then increases. So I want mine to be centered across the middle right here. So if this is a typical length between underarm and a hem, that would be somewhere usually 15 to 16 inches. So let's call that 16 inches. And that means that the center point is at the 8-inch mark. When we do our shaping, we want a straight part for a while, usually somewhere around an inch. It doesn't have to be exactly, but it's around an inch. So that means that I want the decreases to end at about 7.5 inches, and I want the increases to begin at about 8.5 inches. So these are going to be approximately, these are targets, but they're not going to be guaranteed exactly. So I have some ribbing here at the bottom that's a couple of inches, and I know that I want to decrease by a full inch altogether. That's how much I want to go in, because I'll be going in an inch on this side, and then on the, if this is the back side of the garment, then on the front side, 1 inch right here. So I have a couple of inches of ribbing, and I want the decreases to end at about the 7.5 inch mark. So let's call this, the starting point is at about 3.5 inches. So that means that the shaping length for my sweater, I'm aiming at 4 inches. And that's going to be typical. You know, if you've got ribbing, you might have maybe another inch that you could work that in, or if you have a hem or something, maybe you only have a 1-inch hem, you might have a little bit more room to work with, but that's going to be typical, about 4 inches. So let's look at the approximate rows. Well, my row gauge, or my stitch gauge, is 5 stitches per inch, and my row gauge is 6.5 rows per inch. So the approximate number of rows that I am going to have in 4 inches is my shaping length of 4 inches times my row gauge, which is 6.5 inches. So that means that all of this shaping for the decreasing is going to occur over the course of about 26 rows. That's the target. So let's look at what the shaping rate would be. Since I want to go in 1 inch and my gauge is 5 stitches per inch, that means I need to decrease 5 stitches. So I want to look at the approximate rows that I'm going to be working, which is 26, and I want to divide that not by 5, which is how many decreases, but by 5 minus 1. So the number of decreases that I need, but take 1 away. So it's 4. So 26 divided by 4, we're back at that 6.5. This is my shaping rate. And this means I have to work my decrease rows every 6.5 rows. That isn't possible. And because I'm going to be doing them on right side rows, because I'm working flat, I need to be doing them every 6 rows. So I need to round that to every 6 rows. So sometimes your rounding might be quite a bit more or quite a bit less than that. And if I had been closer to 7, I would have had to round up to 8 or down to 6. Because again, I need to work them on right side rows. So that could cause the number of rows that you actually end up working to be quite a bit off from this. So we want to check that. We want to check how many actual rows am I going to be working for my shaping based on doing them every 6 rows. So the shaping rate is every 6 rows, and we're going to multiply that again by this 5 minus 1. And then when we get that answer, we're going to add 1. So that means it's the 25 rows is how long it's going to take. And that's because if I work the first one on row 1, and then 6 rows later, I work the second one, and then I work one on row 13, and then I work one on row 19. So I'm working them every 6 rows. Then the last one is on row 25 because there aren't additional rows to work after that. So you're working them within that span, and you're starting and ending in that span with a decrease. So this tells me I'm really close. So when I have worked 3.5 inches, close enough, whatever, when I'm on a right side row and I'm very close to 3.5 inches, it might be just under or just over, then I'm going to start my shaping. And when I get it done, I'm going to work straight until I'm at as close to 8.5 inches as I can get. And then I will start doing my increases again every 6 rows. My example showed symmetrical shaping in the center of a standard length body. If you are knitting a sweater that's longer in length or shorter in length, where you want to add waist shaping, or if you're moving your waist shaping up to the underbust area, you will have asymmetrical shaping in your sweater, which means that you will need to calculate separately the decreased shaping rate and the increased shaping rate, because they will be different rates, because they will be asymmetrical. I will leave links to all the sweaters I showed earlier, as well as to a PDF of that calculation sheet to help you figure out your shaping rates for waist shaping. If you have any comments or questions about today's video or suggestions for videos you'd like to see in the future, you can leave those down in the comments below, or join the discussion in my Ravelry group, Rocks Rocks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.